Good evening. Welcome to Waterbury Thoughts. Our guest tonight is Ann Phelan from the Board of Aldermen. Ann, how many years have you been on the Board of Aldermen now?
I'm completing my third term, which is two-year term, so it's 6 years. How about that for math, huh?
You're quick.
I didn't even need a calculator.
That's great. That's great. Now, unfortunately, we don't have our sign with us today, but this is one of our Democrat candidates for Board of Aldermen running on Neil O'Leary's slate, and the election is coming up on November 8th. That is about 4 weeks away now. I think it's 26 days. There's quite a few people are counting down as we get closer and closer.
Absolutely.
The momentum's really starting to pick up. We had a great event tonight, a really great turnout, and we'll be getting photos of that up on Facebook later, so be sure to check that out and see what's going on. So Ann, now that I've got you here, my first show was actually our city sheriff, and we talked a little bit about what that means. The second show was a candidate for the Board of Aldermen, and we talked a little bit about that. And so now we have, Board of Education. Talked a little about that. Now we have Board of Aldermen. Getting my things straight here.
Okay.
So I was hoping you could share with us, what really goes on. We see the public speaking portion. I think that's what most people watch. They come to that, they watch that on television, and then don't necessarily know everything else that goes on. So what really is involved with being on the Board of Aldermen?
Well, why don't I take you through a typical meeting, what happens.
Okay.
So the very first, we have the public speaking portion, of which most of the viewers know that. And any citizen or taxpayer can come up and speak before the board with a time limit of 5 minutes. And after the public speaking portion, we break into committees. Now that's where it gets a little, harried, is what's really happening, because the viewing public and the people just see a breakup and what's happening. They don't think anything is really being done. But that's really where all the work is being done, in the committee level. So currently we have 2 committees on the board. We have an intergovernmental committee, in which I chair. Ron Napoli is the vice chair. And we have the finance committee. And under that, Al Negron and Tony Picocci are the chair and the vice chair, respectively. And each committee is comprised of 7 members, nonpartisan, or it should be, but I mean, it's we have 7 members. We have Republicans, Independents, and Democrats that are comprised on both ends. Now, what happens when we break is the 2 committees meet simultaneously. One will meet in chambers, and the other will meet in the caucus room. And at that point, all the items on the agenda are referred to different committees, either the intergovernmental or the finance. So whatever committee a topic is coming to, that committee deals with it, they discuss it, they have department heads or members that are knowledgeable about that item come before, explain it, we can have our questions answered, and then as a committee we vote. And from that we are making a recommendation with that vote to the whole board. When the whole board reconvenes after their committees have met, that's when the intergovernmental and the finance committee make a recommendation to the full board to either approve, disapprove, hold, whatever the action item is, on which the full board then votes as a body. Any member of the aldermanic team can, what they call, pull an item off the consent calendar, meaning that they want the whole board to discuss it out, not in the committee room. And that happens on occasion, because if I'm on the intergovernmental and there's an item in finance, hopefully, and what we do as Democrats, we meet in caucus the week ahead of time. We talk about the items, we determine what questions we have. Like I have questions that are going to go before the finance committee. I'll ask a member of the finance committee, would you ask this question, this question, this question? And then when you come back, give me the answers so that I can then vote accordingly. So that's what we do. When it comes out to the full board, though, as I said, they can pull it off the consent calendar to have a further discussion and then ultimately vote on it. And then it becomes subject to the mayor's veto or acceptance of that, and it becomes the law.
And how many different boards and commissions are you on?
Well, the expectation when you become a member of the Board of Aldermen, that is the top board in the whole city. But it's expected that as an alderman, you will also serve on other boards and commissions within the city. So currently, besides the Board of Aldermen, I serve on the Board of Public Health, and I also serve as the aldermanic liaison to the Civil Service Commission. Now that commission is a little different from all other boards and commissions in that that is the only board or commission in which the aldermanic representative does not have a vote. So the whole purpose of the civil service was to keep it non-political. And so for that very reason, the aldermanic representative does not vote, but is expected to attend the meetings. And then with any of the boards and commissions, the whole purpose of attendance is to bring back the information that's being discussed to the full board so that they can answer the questions, because those items are most likely going to become before the full Board of Aldermen.
And how many hours a week, let's say, on average, do you spend between all of your different responsibilities for being a member of the Board of Aldermen?
Okay. Well,
more math.
More math, yes. Yeah, and I have to do a little calculation here. I work a full-time job, and so this is in addition to that. So on average, depending upon the week of the month, but it's at least 2 to 3 evenings a week that I'm at different boards or commission meetings. Some of those meetings can be as short as an hour, whereas others can last, particularly with the Board of Aldermen, 5, 6 hours at a time. And then we have our caucus meetings in addition to that, where we talk as a group about the items that are coming up for the next meeting. So it's not just me. There's all the members of the Board of Aldermen. They all serve on different boards and commissions. So there is quite a bit of a commitment there. And not that we don't want that, because that's why we're running. But it's not just meeting every other Monday night and voting on things that come before us without really doing homework and knowing what really is behind the papers on the desk.
Yeah. How big a stack of papers do you get for any given aldermanic meeting? I know you get a lot of homework, as you say, to do beforehand.
Yeah. Well, we can generally get, for the board meetings, we'll get a stack of information, piles of paper. Now there's 15 board members, so we'll each get something at least that thick. And sometimes, like the other night, I had a stack that was probably about that big, because there was contracts and all of that. And one of the things that we talked about in the budget subcommittee about saving money is the town clerk came before us and said how the printing costs are so outlandish. You see a stack of that times 15, plus the other members that have to have it, like the city clerk's office and whatnot. So we're looking at like 20 stacks of that much paper. That is completely ridiculous. So one of the recommendations that we made as part of that committee was to purchase laptops that we could have then email all of the information. We could look at it. We don't have to have all of the copies. We would have master copies available for the chair of the different committees, and of course the city clerk's office would have the originals as well. But that would have a tremendous savings on the paper, not to mention the trees that would be saved in that. So part of the surplus money that was discussed the other night at the board meeting, we've set aside, I believe it was $1,000 to buy, no, I'm sorry, 15, what was that?
It was 15,000, I think. So
$1,000 each,
yeah.
$15,000 towards the purchase of laptops that would only be used for city business, not to be bringing home and doing all our personal stuff on it. So,
so they'll actually stay.
It'll be part of the aldermanic thing. They could email the information to us, the city clerk's office, but it would not be allowed to do our own internet surfing and all that good kind of stuff on it.
That's interesting. That's interesting. You know, it is nice to see us kind of moving into the 21st century.
Technology age.
You know, that's good. And I think that is always a question. whenever you hear about laptops, that people are going to be getting laptop computers for a work-related thing, what do they get to do with them? And so that's good that they are going to be more or less part of the desk.
I'll tell you, the city clerk's office was ecstatic because they're spending, it's not just the paper, but the time that it takes to make all those copies and put everything together.
Yeah.
It was taking their staff roughly 4 hours a week.
4 hours a
4
week.
hours a week just to do this.
That's amazing.
That's and
amazing.
It's like almost 10% of the work week just on making copies. It's ridiculous when it can be just emailed to everybody and we all have it and it's right there.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great.
And that was just one of the suggestions that came out. There was a lot more that we're acting upon, but this is what we need. We need to move forward and to get new ideas and keep constantly moving and keep up with technology and keep up with business plans. It's not okay to rest back on our laurels anymore and just say, oh, we're doing good, and it could be a lot worse, Yeah, but we can't let ourselves become complacent.
Yes.
We have to keep moving forward because if we don't, we're going to find ourselves back where we used to be.
That's a scary thought.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's one of the things that you touch on. I think it really is important to be thinking about what can we do that is more. What can we do to reach past where we are now, and that my background to a certain degree is as a teacher, and there was an analogy that came up in a conversation this winter that, we're doing okay. Waterbury is doing okay because we're not as bad as New Haven.
Right. Or Bridgeport,
yeah, exactly.
or Hartford.
We're doing better than New Haven and Bridgeport. That doesn't mean we're doing great.
No.
Doesn't mean we couldn't be doing a lot better. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that everyone should be thinking about.
We can't settle.
Yes.
That's the thing is, I want to always constantly improve. It's expected in my workplace. It's expected that we have to have at least 3 items. Every director has to have at least 3 items to improve customer service, efficiency, financial responsibility. So it's expected we have these 3 initiatives every year. Mm. And I think this kind of thought process needs to be brought into the city. I see what Neil has done in his business background, and I'm not just talking about while he was the chief. We all know about that. We all know about PAL. But there's a lot of other, business acumen that he has that is so desperately needed within the city. Not just with him, but with the team that he can bring in. And I'm not talking about necessarily elected officials. I'm talking about ancillary people as well. We really need people that can open doors for us, that have connections, because we all know you need connections. So we need those connections to be able to springboard forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you shut yourself off and start making enemies outside of the city, at the state level, or even within the city, it doesn't help anyone.
Well, not even the fact that you're making enemies, but it's not helping you if people are looking for jobs. Everybody knows the necessity for networking. It's not that you're making enemies, you're just going out there and being visible and working and you're not always working to try to get something. You're just making the connections, knowing that when the time comes, maybe I can call upon this person's help to move this along for me. And that's what we need to do. We need to partner more. And I've seen, the businesses and the partnerships that, Neil has had, and it is eye-opening to me to see that he has all of these connections. He can call this one up and maybe they can do in-kind services to help with a problem.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
One of the things that I certainly have been very impressed by is thinking outside the box. Just taking the example of the PAL Center, which is a really amazing example. But when you want to create something new, when you want to do something different, that instead of just going to the city and asking the city for money, instead he thought outside the box and looked for a really wide range of funding sources. And my understanding is that the city funding didn't even come until after things were really taking off. And I think that's a creativity and a problem-solving skill that will go a long ways.
Well, that's like with any business plan, though. You need to have leverage. You just can't put all your eggs in one basket and say, this is where I'm going to get my funding. What happens if that dries up? You need to have the leverage to be able to say, I have the support of this group or in this entity and this not, and say, well, I want to be part of that too. And I see it in my workplace where we rely on the Rotary, we rely on seroptimist groups, different groups to give us funding for different programs, initiatives that we have that are ultimately going to help our patients. And so it's no different than in the city. We have to use those kind of skills in a city. Oh, there's a new thought,
One of the, this is, really great. I'm coming up with all sorts of new ways of looking at things, and that, I think that's a really important thing to be thinking about. One thing that I've noticed is that my background is in the nonprofit world, in museums, in education. And so for me, when I look at a city government, I think of it basically as a nonprofit organization. You're not in it to make profit. You are a nonprofit. You do need to get by on as little as possible while still providing the best service for your customers, which would be your residents, your taxpayers.
Right.
And it seems like there is a tendency, not just in Waterbury, but everywhere, to think of a city government not in those terms. And I wonder, I confess I'm not up to date in all of the world of municipal government and all of the different ways of running a city government, but I think that this is an area where we do need some creativity, especially in Waterbury, where we're not moving forward the way we really need to be.
Number one issue on everybody's mind is taxes. By and large, there's no way we can get around it. To run the city, we need X amount of money. In that, we know what our expenses are. We have certain fixed costs that we can't get around. So let's just say, to make it simple, we have $1 million. It's much greater than that, but $1 million that we know are our fixed costs. We got to have revenue of at least that, hopefully more than that, because we always want to have money set aside for a rainy day, just like in our homes. We want to have that happen. So we can only take so much money as revenue from the taxpayers. They can't pay anymore. We understand that. So where's the rest going to come from? That's where the creativity comes into play. Everybody knows we don't want to, reduce our services. We don't want to reduce police protection, fire protection. We don't want to have any, our streets need to be paved. Our streets need to be plowed in the winter and sanded and all that stuff. We don't want to touch those things. So that alone is about, I think it's about 50 to 60% of the of the government budget, excluding education. So if we don't touch those services, it's very little left to deal with. The only other option open to us is grow revenue. And how do we grow revenue? The grand list. What's the grand list? Well, that's our businesses, that's our homes. We need to bring more people in. We need to bring businesses in so that they will have more jobs available to our residents, that the businesses will grow. We'll be able to tax, there's a bad word, we'll be able to on the real property as a personal property within those buildings as well. We need to grow the grand list.
That's something that I think you're going to be hearing a lot in the next few weeks. We need to grow the grand list, absolutely. But I'm not sure everybody knows what that means.
Right.
And that's something
Very
that,
nebulous out there.
right,
What is
the
that?
grand list, and then you can start talking mill rates, and then people really start to wonder what is going on. One of the things I do with my blog, Waterbury Thoughts, is I have a way of tracking what searches people are doing in order to find my blog posts. And one search that happens pretty frequently is how do they figure out the taxes in Waterbury?
Mm-hmm.
How are taxes calculated? And that's something people do wonder, and they do have questions about exactly how that is done.
Well, you want me to give you a little primer?
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be great.
I'm not all the expert on the assessment and whatnot, but as we all know, we go out and we purchase the American Dream, our home. And we have to lay out X amount of money for this home, of which most of us have to go get a mortgage. And so we have mortgage payments every month. And along with the mortgage payment, the principal, we have to set aside escrow for the taxes and the insurance. Okay, so we know what our rates are. Now, from the city's point of view, every home through the assessor's office is assigned a value, and that's property valuation. And so they look, and there's the professional appraisers that are in charge of doing this, and they look at all the homes and similar homes, ranches, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to take into account neighborhoods. They're going to take into account upgrades that you might have as opposed to your next door neighbor, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to look at what homes are being sold for, put all this into the mix, and then they'll come up with the assessed value. From the assessed value, 70% of that rate then becomes the taxable rate. And that's throughout the whole state. That's how it works. So the city then sets a mill rate based upon that appraised rate, and that's how much you're going to have to pay in taxes. Now everybody says, oh, Waterbury's taxes are so high, it's, I can move elsewhere and have to pay a lot less in taxes. And they're right. However, I do want to say Hartford is at 74 mills right now. So that's outrageous. But let's talk to Waterbury. And yes, we are paying a lot in taxes. Unfortunately, a lot of that is because of the pension and the past sins from past years. Enough said about that. But as I said to a friend of mine that was looking to buy a house 2 years ago, and didn't really think living in Waterbury would be beneficial because it was so expensive with taxes. I said, okay, let's just take the example. And she was looking in the surrounding towns. And she looked at several homes, typical, split level, 3 bedrooms, whatnot. In Watertown, a house of that description was going for $325. Thomaston she looked at, it was in the 300 range too, whatnot. She looked all around. In Waterbury, she saw one for $180. So here's my math skills coming back again. $140,000 difference, $150,000 difference. And she said, oh, but the taxes in Waterbury are so high. I said, well, how much taxes would you be paying in Waterbury? She said, oh, about $6,000 a year. How much taxes would you be paying in Watertown? Oh, probably about $2,800. Okay, so $3,000 difference. You're paying how much more for the house? $140,000, $150,000? How long will it take you to regroup $6,000 or, $3,000, $4,000? How long do you expect to live in that house? The rest of your life? She goes, oh, I never thought of that. So she moved to Waterbury.
Oh, good.
She bought that house and she moved to Waterbury.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, I hope she's watching tonight.
I hope so.
The other part of the grand list is not just residential property. It's not just your house that is being taxed. There are also businesses. And with businesses, it's not just the building that the business is in, but it's also the machinery, the equipment. There's a wide range of things. And of course, there's motor vehicle taxes. But it really is with the businesses that we've seen the most dramatic change. And of course, everyone goes back 30 or 40 years to when we had the brass industry.
Chase,
We had
Anaconda,
yep,
Scoville's.
had all of that industry here, and the big three are gone. We still have a really strong core group of manufacturing, but we also have a lot of empty factories. We have a lot of businesses that aren't here. We have, it looks like, hundreds of businesses that have disappeared just in the past 4 years. So this is something that impacts. When you have fewer businesses, you still have as much taxes that need to be collected. The amount of tax revenue is still there, but more of the burden is placed on the homeowner, and that's the situation we're in now, and that's why so many people are really feeling the pinch, because it is primarily on the homeowners, and so when we're talking about growing the grand list, that's bringing in those businesses, bringing them back to Waterbury, and making this a manufacturing center or a healthcare center, or any number of different things.
Well, one of the things you just alluded to about a healthcare, we're all anxiously awaiting to see what's going to happen with the Waterbury St. Mary's possible merger. That will bring a lot of tax revenue to the city, because currently they're non-taxable. And so if they become now for-profit, that's going to be huge as far as the influx of money. So that will help tremendously.
We hope they stay.
Well, that's the other thing, is if that is approved, we have to do our darndest to make sure they do stay in Waterbury, build in Waterbury. We've got to make it very lucrative. City of Waterbury is the largest employer, sad to say. Second are the two hospitals. If they merge into one hospital, I don't think they're going to keep all of the employees that they currently have, a good number, but probably not all. So we're down some people there already. We need to build more businesses up here. They don't have to be, thousands of employees. A couple hundred, several of those would make a tremendous impact.
Absolutely. And it's, not just, as you say, it's not, not necessarily a single employer for 1,000 people, but I think we've gone back to where we were before the big three really got started. We're looking at smaller shops, leaner operations, and manufacturing is actually a very highly skilled position now, which requires a lot of training. But it looks like we are getting close to wrapping up. So, Anne, if you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with our audience tonight about the ups and downs of being on the Board of Aldermen.
It's been one of the greatest pleasures of my life to do this. I hope that the voters will continue, in re-electing me to yet another term. I've done the best I can. That's my philosophy. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, or else I won't do it at all. And speaking on behalf of the rest of the Row A candidates, I think we all have that same impact and we all have that same philosophy. So I hope that all the voters, number one, will get out and exercise your very right to vote, number one. And number two, that in so doing, I hope that you would vote for the entire Row A team.
Wonderful. Be sure to check out o'learyformayor.com for all the latest campaign news, and also look for Neil O'Leary's page on Facebook. Saturday, I'm losing track of the days, Saturday and Sunday this weekend, starting at 8 p.m. all night long, there'll be two specials that we're going to air on Channel 96, so be sure to check those out. And I will see you all again next week.
Good night.